Hey, everybody. Welcome into another session of Dirty Sliders. We're happy to have you. As you can see, we're trying something different again, trying a different program. So hopefully it improves the audio and video quality and things you see and hear. We have a guest. I've been looking forward to get on this program for a long time. We have Carbon Kenny, aka Kenny Koldsbaek. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Kenny goes way back in racing. He's an old guy like the rest of us. According to his bio on his website, you were doing IndyCar racing in '92.
Yeah.
So,
Kenny, how old are you, sir?
5.
You lying.
January.
All right, I'll give it to you then.
Newest
You can
Minister
quote the
British
date.
Columbia.
well,
So
you're
you
one of
have
those
an actual birth certificate.
one of those Canadian imports.
Green card.
Ooh.
We might keep you. Tell us about yourself. How you got into racing? Give us your whole backstory.
As you and I were chatting earlier, I've been asked this before, but everything revolves around being raised in Southern California. Bonneville stuff, drag race stuff, circle track stuff, pavement, dirt, and got running with the right crowd. And they all knew somebody else and somebody else. And you can do everything there and just keep your mouth shut and your ears open and you can meet some people. And that's basically how it was. My brother and I have a twin brother, just started hanging on the fender when dad was changing the spark plugs. It took off from there. And one story, I took my dad to Seattle to the drag races. And at that time I worked for a guy named John Rodak Engines. We made aluminum blocks. I introduced him. He was working on, I'll come to you in a minute, whatever, Blaine Johnson's car. I'm sorry, Blaine Johnson, Alan Johnson's brother. And after the sessions, took my dad up in the trailer and showed him all the motors and all the equipment and all this kind of stuff. And John Rodak was super nice and talking to my dad and everything like that. And was asking him something like that. He goes, how did this all happen? My dad, I took him like up into 8th grade. And then from then on, they did it on their own, which meaning my brother and I, and it just never stopped. And getting into Indy cars and all that stuff, that was all. Gurney's was in Southern California. Went to work for, boom, then you're on the road and just meeting people. Where do you want to go next?
And you started out as a machinist, right?
Yeah. I was a mechanic, worked in shops, stuff like that, worked in a Corvette shop. Everything was medium, high end and stuff like that. And then how did I get into that? I went to work at Forged Shoe Pistons when I was 19 or 20 years old, which was in Santa Fe Springs. I got a job at Forged Shoe Pistons, making pistons. It was at the end of Forged Shoe making stuff for the big guys. I was running an NC machine, numerical control. It was teletype. This was before CNCs, and was doing halfway decent and wanted to get into better equipment or whatever. Answered an ad in a paper, whatever. And it was for a guy named Steve Pick, who was in Anaheim up off of the 91 and the 55, and got a job there. And they had all the good stuff. Started on a one machine. Within a year, I was running all of the machines. I just wanted to learn. So I was a NC CNC guy, whatever. And I went from Steve Picks to Rodax. Now that was the very beginning of the small block Chevy that Rodak did to compete with the Brodex. We were doing the 481, which is a big block Chevy. This is mostly all drag race stuff or whatever. And then we did the JP1, which was Joe Paisano, who owned Venolia. That was the first, other than Keith Black, to compete with Black block. And so that was very successful. And we did the Fontana Fords. We did the Fontana 4-cylinder. We did the Gertie Rodak 4-cylinder for the midgets. We did the V6s for Nissan for electromotive for the GTP stuff or whatever. And then when I left there, he had just done the first forged block for Top Fuel. That he eventually sold that all to Alan Johnson. So I was doing that. I did that for 4 or 5 years at Rodax or whatever. And I was racing sprint cars at Ascot and wanted to go IndyCar racing. And we were on the USAC CRA tour back east, going through Indiana and Ohio and all that stuff, whatever, and got a taste of being on the road and just really loved it. Got really close to being on an outlaw team. And at the same time, I applied at Gurney's. My brother was already at Gurney's, and I got a job at Gurney's in my first year racing. First year I went to Indy was 1985, and the first year working there was 1986 with Tom Sneva at Gurney's. And then I went IndyCar racing for a fair amount of years, and then I moved to Morrisville. And I got a job. I went from IndyCar racing to North Carolina because Mazda started a GTP program in North Carolina. And I thought, I got kind of road racing experience and kind of high-end car experience. It should be easy. And I got the job and I've been in North Carolina ever since. That was 1992. So my IndyCar was from like 86 to 91, 92. And then since then I worked at the 24 car. It's rookie year, and that didn't work out. And then I just started making parts and working for myself.
So how do you
blah blah blah?
What takes you from all that to carbon fiber? What made you?
So being around Indy cars, being around carbon fiber, whatever. And then when I moved Went from that to the Mazda GTP program. I was in the shop and we're in Charlotte. The cars were built in Denver, Max Crawford and Crawford Composites. So I'd leave work at 5 o'clock and I'd go up to Crawford's and I'd make jigs. And I was a machinist, fabricator there. And then we go to the races as a mechanic. I'd go up and help. And I was interested. And they were super, super nice. And I had a Harley at the time. And I'm like, can I make something for myself? Yeah, what do you want to do? So I made a dash, whatever. And it was pretty. And then I made a front fender. And then I made some engine parts, push rod tubes, air cleaner, stuff like that. And we'd all go ride our motorcycles in the mountains here in North Carolina, which is great. Elliot Forbes Robinson and Max and Tim Kuiper, a bunch of us or whatever. I want to say it was every couple of weeks. We're up there and stopped sometime. And one of the guys was on a Ducati and he looked on this FXR Harley. He goes, "Where'd you get that?" I go, "I made it." He goes, "You make me one?" I never made two of anything in my life. I'm like, "What?" And I said, I had never thought about it. And that's how the composite thing started in North Carolina. And Max was just super nice to teach me. Max Crawford was started my whole. So the carbon fiber thing was just from being around it. And I tell people, if I have to fill out a resume, I just tell them you make stuff out of steel, aluminum, glass. We're all just painters. They're fabricators. They make stuff look good. And that's what carbon is. It's just fabricating. A lot of people think that it's high tech and all that stuff. And if you can walk and chew gum, I can show you how to do it.
That's kind of what put you on the radar screen for this podcast was Neilden found your carbon fiber dinner plates. And he's like, "How cool is this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been talking to him about getting him on the podcast. Maybe we should get him on."
It wasn't even that. I was going through Facebook and I found your skid plate for the sprint car fuel tanks.
Yeah.
And then I went on your website looking for more info on that. And then I found dinner plates. I was like, okay, now I need $100 piece dinner plates because why not?
And so what the dinner plates is, when I go with somebody to IKEA, I'm always just looking at shapes. I just look at shapes and I see that and I'm like, if I put two of those together and carbon in between, I can make it shiny on both sides and it'll be super sexy. And I've had mine for probably 15 years running through the dishwasher. They got knife marks on them. And if it's fun when you go on the forums and it's going to kill you and the epoxy and the this and the that, you're like, whatever.
Something's going to kill me. Hopefully it's something cool.
Yeah, it's a friggin' plate.
Hey, if I get killed by carbon fiber, I want you to put that on my headstone.
So I'm in the South and I don't know what everybody does wherever you guys are, but when it thinks it's going to snow, obviously we go get bread and milk. When's the last time you saw the news report where Bob died because he didn't have any milk, or bread? You guys, it's like when COVID with the toilet paper and the paper towels and everything like that. You're like,
how much do you think you're going to be pooping?
Yeah. So how long do you think this is going to last?
Have you ever heard of a washcloth for your butt?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. The dinner plates are cool. Dinner plates are really cool. If you want to impress your friends, you whip those things out.
I impress them with whipping out other things.
There's a guy named Bob Stengio in Strange Engineering, and he had a friend who was super high end. He did some nice things. He had a bus. Stengy had a bus that went to all the drag races, and that's where he hung out and drank wine. And he had their Italian food and stuff. So I made him the spoon with the little teeth on it and the spatula and all this kind of stuff like that. I made one set, all that stuff. And it was like 5 or 6 pieces or whatever. And I gave it to Stengy. It all came from IKEA. There's another guy named Paul Candies and Hughes funny car or whatever like that. And Paul Candies was always in the bus and they're all drinking wine or whatever like that. And he did some nice things or whatever. And I go, man, I'd really like to repay you or whatever. I made briefcases with Simpson also, carbon briefcases. And I go, can I make you one of those? He goes, Kenny, the people I hang out with have no idea what any of this stuff is. Don't worry about it. Okay, whatever. But the dinner plates are cool. Dinner plates are cool.
The infamous bulletproof briefcase.
Lots of them. Yeah. Lots of them.
This is how old I am. I know Blaine Johnson and Alan Johnson from racing at Santa Maria Speedway. And Alan Johnson used to build a bunch of the engines out there before he went big time and went NHRA.
So with the Santa Maria, that was sand, right?
Santa Maria, clay oval, 3/8 mile.
So I know that they started their drag racing on sand.
They do sand drags in the parking lot.
No, I mean, they did it in El Centro, and I think they did it in Guamas and Pismo and stuff too. There was a Top Fuel sand dragster.
Oh yeah. That's the Johnsons got started doing sand drags. Yeah, for sure.
And then Nitro.
Yeah, it's just a tragedy when Blaine died.
We just trying to make things better. Yeah, that was sad. Very sad.
That segues us into safety, which I know you're a big proponent of. And we were talking about this tail tank shield that you came up with.
So I do that. That was all Brian Matherly at Kading. So Brian, I think we had 8 or 9 fires last year, and the girl was, and you talk to World of Outlaws and High Limit, and we'll have a meeting. So last year we all met up at Knoxville and they had a safety meeting, and Maxim was there, and Saldana was there, High Limit was there, Outlaws was there, Knoxville was there, Winters Performance was there. Bunch of really good guys. Little Hod was there, a couple drivers, Pittman was there, and they talked about 4 or 5 things that they had on a list, and none of them was anything about safety. And then the meeting was medium over, and everybody's just looking at each other on the table. And then Brian Matherly goes, "So what are we going to do about these fires? Whatever. And we need to change how we're mounting these tanks." He looks right at the Saldana guy. "What can we change?" Got a discussion going. The Winters Performance guys are changing the rear end cover to kind of shield the top bolts. Instead of just sticking out, it's got a little cover. It's on that rear cover. And and he had a printed one there. Okay, he's moving. What are we going to do underneath? And I was there. And like I say, Saldana was there. And I think there was somebody from IPC, whatever, agreed. How are you going to mount this thing? What's it going to look like? What's it going to do? All this kind of stuff. And then we got into how to mount the tank and how to change this and change that. And there's 4 or 5 things that the group of us medium came up with. And they just said, "Okay, the meeting's over." And we were still wanting to talk. So the people that wanted to go eat lunch went and ate lunch, and we stayed there for another hour. Okay, so what are you going to do? 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 And and we all just tackled it. That's the 28 and a 30 gallon for the Saldana. And this was all Brian Matherly. He's the one that ganged us all up and everything, and everybody tackled their particular job, and that's where it came from. It was all Brian at Kading.
So is he the one making it, or are you making it?
We're making it. And the Winters guys,
off of his idea.
Yeah, it was his idea. He's the one that corralled us all and go, "Hey, what are we going to do?" Yeah, so he was the team leader.
Yeah, so give credit where credit's due, but
yes.
Can people go on your website to buy this?
Yes, or you can get a hold of Kading's. They have them also.
Okay, because I was looking on your website for it. I couldn't find it on your website.
Go to social media, and I apologize, and I will scream and yell tomorrow about that.
And that's
go ahead. I'm all for the safety. Pretty much most of the guests I bring on have something safety related. I come from an EMT firefighter background. I've got banged up. Many guys have been banged up, and I don't want to see anyone else get hurt unnecessarily. So the main reason I wanted to bring you on was, one, this product, and I saw you have a bunch of others on your website to help from banging up the drivers.
Yeah, we do. Being in North Carolina, and we're around all the NASCAR teams, and being here, there's a lot of late model teams, pavement and dirt. We don't have any dirt sprint cars except for Casey, but so we're learning a lot on the pavement side of things or whatever, and how to do a head wrap, knee knockers. Mm-hmm. We don't have that a lot of stuff or whatever. And everybody has access to NASCAR. And the NASCAR Tech Center is right down in Concord. I can call them up and go down there and ask questions or just look at things. It's so the seat belts and the seat testing is not done by SFI. It's done by NASCAR. So you can build a seat for a NASCAR or a Cup car, or Busch car, or truck, Infinity, whatever they call it. Whatever.
I love that you call it Busch. I still call it Busch.
Yeah, but you go through, if you want to build a seat with the seat belts in the seat, you go through NASCAR. You don't even go through SFI or Snell or any of them guys. Everybody's got, and we all have access to it. We all have access to it. And we're all doing work with everybody. And so if something happens to somebody, one person, you're like, "What happened?" We're in the middle of it. So you can go look and see. We had a customer that had one of our seats, went to the Snowball Derby. This is more than a few years ago. A really good customer. He calls me one day and he goes, "You around?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Can you come by the shop?" And I go, "Yeah." I was there like 15 later or whatever. And it's just a regular work day. And I walk in the shop and everybody stops working and kind of looks at me. And I'm like, "Huh." And they're tearing apart a car. I mean, it's down to the chassis, the seat, and they've already got the motor out of it. The front end has moved over about 2 feet. I'm just like, whoa, and it's got our seat and it's still sitting in it. So I walk up to the car and I'm looking at it and I'm friggin' looking at it. I'm like, wow, this was a big one. What's this? He goes, "The dude was ever running. He's run 7th at the Snowball Derby. He got turned. Biggest hit. He was a bigger guy. We make different size seats. It was an XL seat, whatever." And he said, the biggest hit he's ever done, whatever. And he hopped out and he told him, he goes, "Order another one of those." He was fine or whatever. So they bring me to the shop. I'm looking at the car and I'm looking at the seat and I'm looking how it's mounted. And I'm like, the seat was fine, but the car wasn't as good as it needed to be. And it wasn't because of the manufacturing. It's because of the hit was so violent the things I took out my camera and he goes, no pictures. I said, that's all cool. I appreciate it, whatever. They bought a ton of seats from us, and it all has to do with the quality of the product share with you. And hey, what about this? And what about this? And it's just because we're all here. If the guy was in California, I'd have never seen what I saw, or PA, whatever, pick one.
So here's a question to go with your seat with one of our other guests I was on. Was it XR Components? They have a way of softly mounting the seat in the chassis. So that's basically on isolator.
Yep.
Have you played with that at the NASCAR Tech Center or anything of that sort?
Nope.
Because
That answer all your
looking
questions?
at those for sprint cars.
There's a lot of people running them. Yeah, there's a lot of people running them. Yeah. We don't sell them. I don't think we ever will. How's that?
Okay.
That perfect.
And
we know how you feel.
And I see what I see, but most of my answers come from me being very good friends with Bill Simpson. I've run 1,000 questions by him. We've hung out, been to a lot of places or whatever like that, and just listen and listen and listen and listen. I don't need to talk about that stuff. If you're asking me to recommend one or another,
No, not at all.
No,
I'm not
I
looking
don't.
for recommendations.
There's some guys that are running. There's some guys that say that it's helping them, and if it's helping you, run it. But I'm friends with like you guys, a lot of people or something like that, and I've asked a lot of questions about that stuff. And what do you think? And what do you think? And what about this or whatever? And I can only think of one person that told me something very positive, and he's a really good guy or whatever like that. But I have other guys that are at the top level or whatever. And the seat moves. He goes, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't want to feel that. But this is at the top level. If you got a 13-year-old daughter or whatever running something and you think it'll help, run it. Please run it. Please.
And then the irony of the tail tank guard is it's not carbon. It's Kevlar, right?
Well, it's carbon and Kevlar. And the thing is, you shoot a gun at it or whatever like that, but we're competing against plastic. The tail plastic. Anything we put in between the rear end and the plastic is going to help.
And that's the issue, is that when these sprint cars and midgets are taking big hits to the rear end is going into the tank and ripping it open.
Correct. Yeah. That's what we've seen. Yeah. And that's what made the cover with the shield on it to try and keep the studs from protruding into the plastic. In a perfect storm, we don't know what's happening or whatever. We've seen what we've seen, and we're just trying to keep the fuel inside the tank. And the other thing is the tank on the car.
Yeah. Two very important things.
And they were all discussed at Knoxville last year. Thank you to Brian.
And forgive me, I forget the young lady's name, but she just posted on Facebook what badly she was hurt and burned. And she had nothing but praise for you for coming.
Wasn't that nice?
Yeah.
I've never met her. I've never talked to her.
Unfortunately, it sometimes takes a tragedy like that to improve the safety.
Dale Earnhardt. Yeah.
I mean,
how far do you want to go? Was it Mike wants to talk about arm restraints? You want to talk about arm restraints, Mike?
That's
Microwave.
Microwave.
Yeah.
I can't see all I see is sorry.
It's all right. It's all right.
You ready to talk about arm restraints?
Thomas here.
You mean microwave?
You want to talk about?
Microwave.
Let's talk about arm restraints.
Yeah. So
Do you know who Daryl Gwynn is?
Yes.
No, sir.
Oh,
Yes.
He's
Daryl
young.
Gwynn.
Can he forgive him?
I know, right? These young kids these
well,
days.
it won't matter to him because he doesn't know it firsthand. But I'll tell you the story. Daryl Gwynn's a drag racer. He's in a wheelchair right now. He's broke his back, and it was the worst. All the stars lined up. So he ran Top Fuel. He was the golden boy. He was winning everything, won everything in alcohol. His family's in drag racing. Look him up while we're talking. Texting Daryl Gwynn. Well, he was, I don't know if he's leading the points, but he's winning way more than his share. And NHRA had a break, and he had sold one of his Top Fuel cars to a guy in England, and NHRA was trying to go over to Europe. He had kicked the rod out of this chassis or whatever like that. They fixed the chassis, went back to the manufacturer, fixed the chassis, ran it a couple more times, sold it to somebody in England that was going to race it or whatever like that. They had a break in the schedule. Hey, come on over and run your old car. Okay. He's there, and it's a big deal. He's a superstar, all this kind of stuff. And he gets up to the line. Oh, Dad, I forgot my arm restraints. He goes, or his dad goes, I'll go get them. He goes, nah, it'll be okay. I'm just going to do a half pass. I'm going to shut the thing off at half track. He'll take off or whatever like that. His dad's, let me go get your arm restraint. Dad, it's fine. I want you to do a half pass. So he does his burnout, does an exhibition pass. He's by himself, half track, frame breaks. The car lays over on its side. He's sliding down at whatever, 300 and something miles an hour, whatever like that. He's laying on its side like this on the car, and his arm is dragging on the ground as the thing's sliding or whatever. And then his arm catches and spins him around and breaks his back. He's in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And It was absolutely devastating. He was there. If I'm wrong, read the story. I think he was there like 6 months, something like that in England. One day he just decided, he goes, I'm friggin' done. I'm out. You know what? They flew him home. It was here in the States. And he was in the hospital for 6 or 8 months or something like that. And one day he just told his buddy, he goes, hey, go to the house and get my gear bag. We're out of here. And at 11, 12 o'clock at night, loaded up all his stuff and got in a wheelchair and left. But super good dude, super good dude. Gives out wheelchairs, helps with the community. He is in a wheelchair because of arm restraints. His dad was on suicide watch. It was very bad. Super good family, super good people, still super good people. You can show the video?
Oh, thought I was.
Oh, nice try. Have the
Now
action, the
something
video?
else popped up. There we go.
Yeah,
So as
watch
we tell everybody, we are not experts. We're just a bunch of guys that know a whole lot of nothing.
arm restraints.
So-
arm restraints. Where are your arm
So what you're telling me, Kenny, is to look up and buy some arm restraints right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was, and I can keep
There
going
it
into
goes.
it. Watch this. There he goes. Yeah.
Wow.
Paralyzed right there.
We said
Half
the
of his
story
left
about-
of his left arm is gone because it actually ground on the ground, and then he broke his back. Gosh darn it! You just interrupted his story. It was going to be a really good one too.
We were at Thomas should go buy arm restraints tomorrow.
Oh, that's what I'm going to say. So the arm restraints go around your arm like this. Somebody somewhere one day decided, well, let's sew them into the suit, and we'll sew them right here, and you just clip in, and this will be really good for movement. Raz that I work with Bondio and Corey Cruzman, all that kind of stuff. So Corey's driving Bondio's car at Sacramento on the mile, the midget. Gets together with somebody, and I think they counted 12 of these. Guess what happened with his arm restraints? When his arms were flying out of the car, the arm restraints went like this and slid down the suit. So his arms are still outside of the car, and the arm restraints are still hooked up.
Jeez.
So that all went away, and so they're all now here or whatever like that. Yes, go get some arm restraints.
Yeah, I think my
Yes.
suit has them sewn in at the elbow.
Yeah. The wrist thing didn't last very long. But Corey can tell you the story better than I can, but it was a big one. I believe it was 12 flips, and his arms were, he broke his arms and all that stuff. He was beat up. Get some arm
Obviously.
restraints. Microwave.
I'm looking at them right now. I'm not lying to you. I really.
And you know what? They make them at all different colors. So if you want them to match your eyes,
You'll probably want them in rainbow color.
there you go. Polka dots.
So
Obviously,
Go ahead, Raz.
I'd heard the story of Daryl Gwynn and he got hurt and got paralyzed. I did not know it was because his arm basically twisted his
Arm
back
restraints.
around.
Mhm.
Arm restraints. They got out of
Yeah.
the,
Wow. Go ahead, Thomas.
So, along with the arm restraints, we were talking about it beforehand, but like I said, I was going to bring it up again. I'm looking at upgrading my head and neck restraint system because right now I run a next gen, and I'm looking at upgrading. And I was going back and forth between an actual Hans device or the Simset hybrid. And I heard what you had to say beforehand, but I think it's just as equally important to get it out there to the 107 people that are subscribed to this podcast
Yeah.
as well.
And like I told you before, whatever, it's like me telling you wear an Arai, a Simpson, or a Bell helmet. We all have to pass tests. The hybrids are the same way. Now, I know that when the hybrid was developed and the Hans was first or whatever, and then Trevor Ashline developed the hybrid. I screwed that up. Hutchison did that at RCR, and then Trevor ended up with it. And I know that the tests on the rig at SFI are different. The loads that you can pull on the hybrid versus the Hans device are almost like the hybrid is twice what the Hans device is. And like I was explaining to you, the Hans has the legs that go down the front. I can tell you in essence, Antron Brown got up, I want to say it was at Indy. I don't know where it was. He's in a top fuel car. He got upside down and we're going to commercial or whatever. We come back and everything's fine or whatever. He couldn't get out of the car because the Hans device was stuck underneath the seatbelt. He couldn't get the seatbelts off. He couldn't get the Hans device off. They had to get him out of the car. So if that thing had still been running or on fire or any of these upside down or whatever, he couldn't get out of the car. So there's pluses and minuses. Find somebody you trust, that you really trust. Don't ask 100 people, ask 2 or 3 in the industry and what they wear and why. Tell me why you're wearing this versus this. You know what I'm saying? And then make your choice. If I had a choice right now, I'd wear the hybrid. It's lighter. I think it's more comfortable, and they all got to pass their tests. They're all good.
Yeah, the Simset hybrid is definitely the way that I've been leaning. I just know that Hans has been around forever. If Hans made a shitty device, it would not still be around.
F1 guys wear them. It's the top
Yeah.
of the food chain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they wear panties too.
And their fire suits are cut funny.
As I'm getting my arm restraints, like I said, I'm definitely looking at those. And then I think we also talked about belts. And nowadays there's different size belts for 2-inch, 3-inch, 1.5 inch, whatever. There's different latching systems. Speaking of latching, linking cam locks, and something that I had been told by some people were that nobody has the experience, but they feel as though the cam locks would be easier to accidentally knock loose in a violent wreck, vice the latch and link. Then Raz said something that made sense to me was it's probably easier to knock the latch and link loose with it just being one flippy lever versus having to twist and rotate. The cam lock can't run your thumb over the cam lock and knock it loose, where you can catch your thumb under a latch and link and pull it.
And the thing is, you're a dirt guy, and the dirt world is different than the pavement guys. We use our more movement of our arms and what goes on inside the car, either a late model or modified or sprint car. Dirt guys are plenty busy compared to pavement guys. So your chance of, like you say, knocking something loose in a dirt car versus pavement where they're just this or whatever like that, and they don't get upside down like we do in the dirt, especially the sprint cars and midgets or whatever like that. But again, it's personal preference. Go to an outlaw race and just walk around and look in the seat in the cars. And if 90% of them are cam lock or flip and latch or whatever, say that's where I'd start. And then find somebody you can talk to or trust and go, do you mount it this way or do you mount it this way? I'm getting new belts. How do you want me to, why do you have the latch mounted that way? And they'll give you the reason. And if it makes sense to you, do it.
Hey,
Yeah, and
Thomas.
that's something I watch a lot of when I watch, because I got Flow Racing subscription, right? So I watch all the high limit stuff, Lucas Outlaws, Mars, all
yep.
that stuff. It seems like there are more individuals out there wearing a hybrid system than they are a traditional head and neck restraint system.
I agree with you. Yep. Agree with you. Yep.
Hey, Thomas, who's on your shirt?
Kyle Larson.
Okay.
Yeah, boy.
He wears a hybrid. He wears a hybrid and uses cam lock. Okay.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. It's about wrecking. He knows about racing.
Knows
So I
about
wanna-
winning.
I want to throw it back a little bit. We were talking briefly that a lot of these safety innovations have come out through a huge tragedy of Dale Earnhardt Sr. Getting killed in a race car. And I know you could probably credit that to your seats and other seats similar to that coming along, because that was one of the things that was said was how his seat was mounted and how his belts were mounted. And I don't really want to get into that because there's a lot of stuff. But I do know, you being friends with Bill Simpson got thrown under the bus on that deal. And I know Bill took that
Unbelievable.
really hard.
It was sad. It was sad. So if you don't want to go into it, I won't go into it or whatever. I know what I know. And I'll tell you, Simpson and Rusty and Schrader went and saw the car about 2 weeks after the wreck. And we do a lot of work with Simpson. We're friends or whatever. Never asked him a question, but I knew the whole world knew that they went and saw the car or whatever. I was in his office and I'm like, you see the car? He goes, yeah. I go, can you sleep at night? He goes, no problem. I said, cool. And that was the only thing I asked him about.
That's all I need to know.
And I know the story. I know what people think and I know what I know. And to back up the story, it's always nice to see things or whatever. I was at a shop for a high-end hot rod guy in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was invited by some friends and it was a very small group, 10 or 12 people. And we went to lunch. We went to this guy's shop. We went to this guy's shop. We ended up at this guy's shop and he was very high end. They had a really nice business. He had a lot of really nice toys. And in the front of his shop was all of his hot rods and motorcycles and lights and movie screens and all this. And the guy was bone stock, super nice guy. So then we go back to the back of that room, building, showroom, whatever like that, go through a little door and here's the toys. And there's boats and jet skis and motorcycles. And he's got race cars and he's got some cup cars. He's got some 3 cars, some 8 cars. And at that time we were doing a lot of stuff for the 8 car and other stuff, whatever. And these rich guys buy these cup cars and they're just show cars with Target motors in them. And I'm like, oh, okay. So they peeled off to go look at boats and stuff like that. I peeled off to go look at the 8 car because we were doing a lot of stuff for the 8 car at that time or whatever. And I look in, I go, oh, these are real race cars. These are nice or whatever. And there's one 3 car sitting there and I walk over to the 3 car and I walk and I look inside the door. And what happened to Dale Earnhardt on that day, car had that same problem that I was looking at in that guy's showroom. And I told one friend, I said, come here. And this person knew what the whole real story was. And I go, look at that. And it was, what it was is how everything was mounted is what happened to him. And it had nothing to do with seats. It was how everything was mounted. And since then they corrected how we mount things and everything. It's just like we were talking about mounting the seats with Zeus buttons or bolts. You can tie wrap seatbelts in, right? And still in the car. So that was the beginning of what the story was with Dale.
I'll say a little bit about it. If those that don't know, when that story first broke, they were basically saying it was the fault of the Simpson belts that the belts failed.
Correct. Yep.
Which was not true at all. It's basically how Dale chose to mount his seatbelts. He
100%.
made that choice. He made that choice.
100%.
I made the mistake years ago. The pictures are out there of that car, and I wish to God I'd never looked at them. I did.
But
and
that's so,
it's-
it was old school. That's how they mounted things.
yeah, it's pretty graphic with the pictures.
Yeah,
sad.
they didn't clean the scene.
Like I say, I come from IndyCar racing before I went NASCAR racing or whatever. And that was a 35G hit. In Indy cars, I've seen 120 and the guy hops out of the car. It's completely different worlds. You can survive a 35G hit.
I watched that hit happen live, and there was just no way it killed somebody. It didn't look like that big of a hit.
Want to change the subject?
Last thing I'll say before we change the subject
Okay.
is the horror on Ken Schrader's face when he looked in that car. I'm sure that lives with him forever.
Nicest guy on the planet. Is sad that he had to do that. What a great guy. Kenny is.
Absolutely.
My brother spent a lot of time. He was his car chief at Hendricks when he was the 25 car and stuff, and became very good friends with him. And he's still a good family friend or whatever. But that was sad. It was very sad. Such a good guy. Gosh, he's a great guy.
I will change subject. I know you ordered him.
Did you get some Nomex underwear with that?
I've already got them. Kenny, I'm in the Navy and I've been in shipboard fires, and getting a shipboard fire is probably one of the worst things I've ever done because the ship is an oven and it catches on fire. It holds the heat. Ever since I
Service?
started racing. You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ever since I started racing, it's been a 3-piece suit, Kevlar underwear, fireproof underwear,
You fighting on the track.
socks. I know, right? Socks, gloves, head sock, the whole nine. Like
You're a minority.
I will not play around with fire at all.
Because you've already played with fire.
I worked with a guy named Eddie Worth at Ascot in CRA or whatever like that. And he came from flat track racing where you wear the leathers. And he always wore a 3-piece suit with the underwear, with the socks, with the everything or something like that. And we'd be in El Centro or something like that, or Manzanita, whatever. It's 100 degrees. And he's got a suit and he's got the whole thing up. It's not tied around his waist or whatever. People would look at him and just go, how can you wear that thing? He goes, compared to leathers, this is nothing. This is absolutely nothing. He goes, wear the leathers in Oklahoma City in the middle of the summer at a fairground. He goes, this is nothing. But he was just like you. He wore everything. And
Everything, every time.
never had an issue. And you know what? I lied. Never wore gloves. Never knew this. We went on the USAC CRA tour, and the first race was at Putnamville. We go to push off for wheel packing, and the USAC official stops him and, hey, you got to have your gloves. We're like, where's his gloves? And his girlfriend's, he don't wear gloves. What? Never knew that. Didn't pay attention. Whatever. We had to go buy gloves. He didn't race the bike with gloves. He goes, he's never worn gloves. He's riding flat track out there doing 120 miles an hour on the dirt with no gloves on the rocks and all that kind of stuff. He goes, no, he's never worn gloves. Yeah. So he wore everything except for gloves. He didn't want gloves. He's
That's
the one that
overkill. That's
He's
pushing
the
it.
one that told me, he goes, when he was flat track racing, living out of a van, we all used to have to wear white in the pits. All those guys were outlaws or whatever like that. They had their dog and they lived in their vans. And they went from race to race and they shared gas money and all that kind of stuff. And he said, and then they didn't let women in pits. And then they let women in pits and I couldn't bring my dog. He goes, this isn't fair. Times have changed.
A couple months ago, you busted my ass on Facebook because I was speaking about something I probably shouldn't have been, but I thought I knew the story. Evidently I didn't, about Bondio car and the ski, because I always thought it never ran at Chili Bowl, that it was only used in testing, I think, at Ventura once, right?
So explain to me how the ski is going to go around the racetrack.
Off the ground, mostly.
Yeah, no. The ski was a joke. It had a roller blade on the bottom of it so we could push it in and out of the trailer. It never ran. It never did anything. I almost got in a fist fight with a guy. He was on the other side of the rope and he's the ski. And I'm just laughing because I think he's messing with me. And he goes, no, you ran it. And I'm like, what? And he was ready to go to blows. And I finally just walked away. I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. It never ran. It never moved. It never rolled. It never did anything. It went in the trailer and out of the trailer.
Jesus.
And it was on the car that we didn't run. And so Chili Bowl, it'd be on there for 3 days. And then when we went to run that car, we'd put the spindle back on. It never ran.
Okay, so I was half right.
Yes, it never ran. Is that what you
So
said?
it was mocked up. It was showed off.
We
I said
ran
it
the
never-
motor-
Somebody
we
saw
ran the
some tires in
motorcycle
the
wheel.
toy hauler.
We ran that a lot.
Yeah, I said it never ran at Chili Bowl, and I was right about that. I thought
You're correct. You're correct. Pictures that were on the internet and all that kind of stuff was at Ventura.
Yeah, I recognize Ventura in the background. So you've been a part of the Bondio team for a long time, known for their really wild, wacky, innovative stuff. Those cars, rumor about around Chili Bowl this year was the reason Bondio didn't bring cars is because they were under the minimum weight because they ran a minimum weight rule this year. I don't believe that, but obviously don't know how much they weigh. Were they that much under minimum weight? Or
So we had all the hotel rooms. Everything was sorted out. He had one driver that was 100% and then another that was to be announced or whatever like that. And then the 100% driver said he was doing something different. And it was kind of late in the game. And Andy goes, what am I going to do? And him and John Barnes Pumps is really good friends. And they had a little chat and said, I don't know, how long have they been having the Chili Bowl? 30 years, 25 years? I think he's missed 2. Yeah, whatever like that. And so he goes, we're not going. Cars were ready. Trailer was ready. Everything was ready. The number 1 driver decided to do something different with somebody else, which they can do that, whatever. But he'd already committed to him, then changed his mind. And he just goes, I'm done. So everything's ready to go for next year.
So obviously they would have made
Prep's
weight.
done.
Sorry?
Obviously they would have made weight.
Yes. Yes.
That being said, I was on one of the only 2 teams that got caught cheating and disqualified.
Yeah.
Oops.
That happened this weekend in Cup.
Yeah, but it's always cool with the Bondio team because, like I said, it's innovative looking cars, if not innovative. I love the way they just are outside the box.
It's such a pleasure to hang out with him and just be around him and listen, and then the people that he draws in. And everything's clean, it's proper, it's ready, it's prepped. Everything's ready to go all the time. And it's just, you just push it up there and let's see what we can do. It's just a pleasure to be around him and the whole group.
Yeah, there's a little bit of carbon fiber on those cars too.
A little bit of carbon fiber. I'll do anything for him. I'll follow him off the edge of the earth. Whatever you want, Andy, we'll do it. And
Well,
he doesn't ask for much. And I just offer and offer and offer. And he goes, okay.
He's always got your seats outside his trailer. The only question I would have is that he obviously is questionable about the people he runs around with because he lets Oki hang around.
Yeah. Enough said.
You're a man of few words, Kenny. I'm
Yeah.
realizing that.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah.
So the other thing I want to talk about, we talked about a little bit before we turned on the recording, was the Speed Demon team you've been a big part of 4 years is gone away this year, right?
Yeah. George passed away and there were still funds. And then the family decided we want to go a different direction. One of his sons, I believe, was going to maybe try and drive it, or son-in-law. And that didn't happen. And they told Steve to refurbish it, take it all the way down, put it all the way back up. And we're going to donate it to Speedy Bill's Speedway Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska. And all the drivetrain and extra parts and trailers and stuff like that, she, Mrs. Poteet, is going to donate or give to Steve for all of his backbreaking work and making that thing a overnight 20-year success. In the meantime, a guy named, is it Steve Knapp? Something Knapp in San Diego has a car that was built by Tom Hanna in Wichita for a gentleman, Bobby Moore. And they went out and ran it a couple times and then lost interest. And Bobby thought maybe he was a little over his head. So the car sat, and then Bobby put it up for sale. And we're all friends of this gentleman, Tom Hanna, who is just a god in the fabricating world. Car is absolutely just amazing. And the Napster, as we call him, that car was in San Diego. He ran it a few times and realized he was way out of his league. He was over his head and everything like that. And we're all friends out there. Everybody's friends on the Salt. And he called up Steve. He goes, come get this thing. He goes, take my truck, my trailers, my parts, my gas cans, my screwdrivers, my crescent wrench, and the big hammer, and see what you can do with this thing, because I can't do this anymore. And so at the same time that Mrs. Poteet decided to donate the car to the museum, this guy shows up and goes, here, take it for 5 years and see what you can do. So right now it's in the midst of sharing with you earlier. We have Demon Team Steve Watt. Maxwell Industries has A, B, C, D, and F blown fuel records. The only one we don't have is which all those things designate engine sizes. And the E is a 258-inch, I believe, small block that we have, twin turbos. And we've had it in the car a few times and it hasn't done what it's supposed to do, whatever. And maybe this year. So they're going to put that E motor in the Napster and unload with that this year and see what. And so it'll be the same crew, same people. Ratsky will drive it from ARP, Chris Ratsky, and go shake it down and see how fast. And then after they get the E record, I believe, going to go after a bunch of unblown records, which seem fairly soft. So that's what Speed Demon.
You guys, without a doubt, are going to make a run for the Hot Rod Trophy again this year because you've won
That's
it
the only reason we go
years.
out there or whatever. And I want to say, I don't know how many, do we have 12 or something like that?
I don't know, 112 probably.
It's like I think it's 12, but I think
In
the
a
next
row.
first, yeah, I think the next closest, no, Terminator got it that one year. They went 501 or whatever like that. And this, whoever makes one pass fastest. So Terminator got it one year. but I think we have it like, I don't know, 12 times, whatever. And the next closest person has it like 3, something like that. And that's George is just unbelievable. I don't know what the stats are today, but yesterday there's 12 people in the world that have been over 400 miles an hour in a car. If you add up all the times they've been over 400, they don't equal what George has done by himself. And I think George is somewhere like 52 times over 400 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, on his side in the original Speed Demon.
That one it was not a long story. The data guy decided he was going to turn off the traction control and didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
So I think that wreck, so the front wheels were doing 380, 390 or whatever like that. And the rear wheels were doing, I believe, 412 when it decided to swap ends.
True.
That guy was
Just a
voted
little
off.
bit of-
He was voted off the island. He didn't tell the driver. He didn't tell Biggie. He didn't tell the Detweiler, the motor guy. He didn't tell anybody. And so we got the car back. We got all the pieces back. And Kenny Detweiler goes, how much traction control do we have in this thing? And Biggie's, I don't know. And he goes, let's see. So got the wire loom out of the trailer and then got all the boxes off the car. Let's see if any of this stuff will work. And laid out a couple tables and laid the whole wire loom out and all the boxes and everything like that and plugged the battery in and everything lit. You're like, oh, we can get the data out of this thing or whatever. Just started playing with in-car cameras or whatever. And I believe we had 5 cameras on the car. And I think we had 2. If you look up on YouTube, whatever, you can find that wreck too, where we wrecked the Speed Demon. I think 2 lived, whatever. So you can see the whole wreck from the inside and see what George went through. The long story short is the data guy decided we didn't need traction control.
Yeah, George had the trophy 10 times.
10 times?
He had it 10 times from
Okay.
07 to 21.
You know what? And then Ratsky got it last year. So it's
Mhm.
11.
I'm not sure how many Latsky has, but I know George has 10. It was a 12th time. Sorry. Last year was the 12th total.
Okay, there you go.
So Ratsky's got
Yep.
2 of them.
Yeah, George quit in a couple years.
Yep.
And 21 he stopped with 10
Yeah.
hot rod trophies. That's nothing
Guy
to shake a
was-
stick at.
Salt of the earth. The guy had the finances. He could fly his own jet. He could fly a helicopter. He could be in a yacht. He could be out there in a Prevost motorhome. He could whatever. He lived in Memphis and drove to Bonneville because he wanted to. And if we were out on the salt at 7 a.m., he was there at 7 a.m. They kick you off at 7 p.m. whatever. But if we left at 5, he left at 5. If we left at 7, he left at 7. He was always with us. We would have 27 people at breakfast.
Wow.
That was his golf game. That was this is my golf game. And you know how many fastest people in the world there are? And that was him. He liked that. And he wasn't a bragger. He wasn't a boaster. He was very humble. The first place he had indoor plumbing was his freshman year in college. This gentleman is humble. He was a good guy. Great family. The family was great. And Ratsky and him were very close, and Biggie, Steve Watt. And it was very nice that he let Ratsky get in that car, get all of his licenses, and then get to push the pedal all the way down. And it was nice watching them work together. And George is now, this is what you're going to see, and this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to see. And if you've been to Bonneville or whatever, the cones, the track is probably 1/4 of a mile wide on the long course where we run or whatever. And you drive down through there in the middle of 100 miles an hour, and you're just like, yeah, there's a cone over there, and there's a cone over there, whatever. And George is telling him, he goes, now, when you get down to the other end where this thing's honking or whatever, he goes, it looks like the cones are about this far apart, whatever. And there's markers every mile. There's big banners. And then I think it's every quarter or every half, there's like an orange cone or whatever like that, if you could see anything at that speed. But you can see the big banners, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The track is 5 miles long. First time Ratsky ran it all the way through there, looked like the cones are about that far apart. He goes, oh my goodness. And you don't want to look this way. You want to look, I think they call it floating mountain. It's way out there, 20 miles. And that's all you look at. Just aim yourself at that mountain and you won't hit anything. And don't forget to pull the chutes.
Yeah, and that car, I think from the outside looking in, I think Biggie is the most responsible for this, but that car is immaculate. It just is a showpiece every time it sees the light of day.
So that car is I want to say 38 feet long or something like that. And so we crashed the first one, full panic. George said, do what you got to do to build the second one. So he put 2 frame chassis tables together and laid the car out. And I spent a lot of time in Ventura during this event or whatever. We got the whole thing. He and his guys got the whole thing built or whatever. And then it came time to flip the car over and weld the bottom part of the car. Yeah. Zoom in on that timesheet. Oh, that's not the big one though.
That was the 20.
Yeah. See, that's only 460 exit speed. blah, whatever. I'm teasing. I'm teasing. I'm teasing. Put that timesheet back up.
Give me 1 second here.
So what we're looking for, so there's a 2 1/4. See, it goes 1 mile, 2 mile, 2 1/4, 3. That 2 1/4 is the number we're looking for. When we hear that and what it is, there's somebody on a microphone in the AM radio station or whatever, and she's reading off the times. And when we hear that 2 1/4 number, we know what the exit's going to be, just based on doing this a long time or whatever. And we're looking for, what is that one? 350? What is it? 331.
331.133.
Yeah. So if we hear something in like the high twos, you're like, we're going to be trying to get to 400 or whatever like that. You hear something in the 320 range, you're like, oh, it's moving pretty good or whatever. And anything above that, you're like, you just wait and see what the number's going to be. And what was this one? This one's 459.
459.734 was
yeah.
exit.
So
With
obviously
wow.
that's moving. Yeah.
But
But we're
the
listening for
DA
2
was at
1/4 number.
7,400 feet.
And then we have a retrieval vehicle. So that's at the 7 mile mark, 7 or 8 mile mark. I'm in a van we call the prison bus at the 5 mile mark. And when he comes by the 5, we want to see the chutes out and it's not on fire. We all have radios. Then there's some people like at the 4 mile and then whatever. So when he goes by me in the van, when you hear a car go by you at 460 miles an hour, you the life-changing experience. And I'm jaded or whatever, all of us are, or whatever like that, because we see it so much, is you can tell the difference between a 420 mile an hour pass and a 460 mile an hour pass. I can't tell you what the numbers are, but you're like, that wasn't so good. And it's 430, whatever. But it's you can definitely tell below 400, where if you've never been there before, you just think that guy's going 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's a bucket list item. That's Kenny Detweiler there, the motor guy, responsible for all the power. We take 4 motors out there. One's in the car, 3 are in the trailer. And we're out there for a week. We start Saturday morning at, I think, 9 o'clock or something like that. And we run till Friday at noon, I believe. And sometimes we've run all 4 motors through the car. The year we went 481, I believe we only had 1 motor in it. And that was the first time we'd run a big block. And it was a 555-inch twin turbocharged motor. And that we had an issue with a piston, and we got that changed. And then the thing ran like a bracket car. It was unbelievable. That thing is so nice. It is so fun to work on. We wrecked the first car, and we'd been talking about building a second car, a new car, Bradsky there. So that's the E motor. There you go. See on the tail, go back to that one, the one before. So on the tail, it says E/BFS blown fuel streamliner. I can't remember what the one's for, why we put that on there, but that's for us. But the E, and obviously that's after the run because the chutes are all wrapped around the tail. And that's the only record we don't have. And hopefully Ratsky will get that this year. But so when we were thinking about building, there's the hot rod trophy there. So we were thinking about building the second car, and then we wrecked. Oh, crap. And we were testing. This wasn't during an event. George had never been to Ventura. He flew out to Ventura with his sister. And what are we going to do, Steve? He goes, we can do whatever you want to do, boss. You can be ready for this year, not skip a year. Like we can race, wreck, and then build a whole brand new car from scratch. And we'll do whatever you want, boss. And George said, do it. And Steve did it. And it was a lot of hustle from Steve's guys. My end of it was, I think I was 6 months or whatever, making stuff from not stuff. And just what I'm pointing at is, like the old car, you couldn't take the rear wheels off. And to check the air, you had to jack it up in the air and you had to go up underneath the fender. And then you couldn't do this and you couldn't get in and out of the car right. And it was this and kind of that. What would you change? What would you change? What would you change? What would you change? We put all of our heads together. How can we do this? We can do this and do this. Oh, okay, let's do that. And so that second car was, I think we moved the motor. We went from stainless steel and metal tanks, water tanks, oil tanks, all that kind of stuff, accumulator tanks to aluminum tanks, and just took a bunch of weight off. And don't quote me, but I think we took 700 or 800 pounds out of the car, moved the motor and for traction and aero, if you will. And again, this is all Steve, what we're going to do. And he made it happen. We went out there and friggin' hot rod trophy again, brand new car.
And Steve posted that build on Facebook as he was building it. I remember following it from the plywood bucks he started off with all the way to the end. One of the coolest features, forgive me for geeking out a little bit here, but the turbos are frame mounted. When you change the motor, the turbos don't change. Those turbos stay with every motor you run, and every motor just lines up with that system.
So one year, I can't remember what year it was, he had all 4 motors in the car running, plumbed and everything, and out, put them in the trailer and put the next one in. All of them, I could take any one of you 5 guys, there's 4 of you plus me, 5 guys, and you could change the motor in that car if I didn't tell you a thing, because all the water lines came out of the same place and all the vent lines came to the same place. So if you took the water line off the motor coming out, you could put the water line on the car going back in because it goes the same place.
That's
All
awesome.
four plumbed the same. I mean, it was, and the transmission, if you know how a transmission is mounted in a Pro Stock car, you undo the 4 bolts and transmission is on rails. And so they don't take the transmission out unless they're changing gears or whatever like that. But if you're working on the clutch, you just slide the transmission, take the drive shaft off, slide the transmission back, work on the clutch, do all your stuff, slide the transmission back up. You never take it out of the car that's how it is in the speed demon. It's on rails. We literally take the 4 bolts out like you do in your Camaro, slide the transmission back after you take the drive shaft out, and we pull the motor out. The other one's got the bell housing on it, clutch, everything. Yeah, no turbos. And I want to say that when we were running the small block, before we went to the big block, small blocks, we'd have 4, and I think only one of them, because the deck height was different, that we had to change headers. They were always the same headers. That's the car
that's
we
a
wrecked.
picture of the first car, right?
Yeah, that car wrecked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Beautiful.
just a thought to put into stuff like that, where it just makes it that much easier to work on.
Teamwork. It was all teamwork.
Yeah.
It's all teamwork.
It's amazing.
Just such a blessing, an honor. I got to work when I worked, I don't know what I told you. I worked at Forge True. I worked for a guy named Art Chrisman, who was a big name in the drag race world and innovations and all that kind of stuff. And I always heard stories about Bonneville and all this kind of stuff like that. Whatever. I'd go to El Mirage, being a Southern California guy a couple of times, whatever, big deal. Steve and I are both sprint car guys. I knew him. I never worked with him, talked to him. They took the injector and they turned the injector around for an intercooler or something like that. He had to instead of the air just going in the scoop and going through the intercooler and into the turbos or whatever, he needed to make a U-turn and get into the turbos. And he calls me up. Hey man, what's up? He goes, I need some help. I'm like, what's up? He goes, I need help with this injector and I think you can help me. I'm like, okay, fly me out there. So I fly out to Ventura, the whole thing out, and talk to him about it. What about this? Yeah, we both agree and order this stuff. And I flew home to North Carolina and call me when you get it and I'll come back out. So whatever, a couple of weeks later, he goes, all the stuff's sitting here. No idea what you're going to do. And we can probably do this in a week. So fly out there, whatever, on a Sunday. I show up in Ventura on Monday. Monday at 5:00, we stuck what we made in a box to send back to North Carolina. I'm out of here. He goes, that's all you need. And we made some pretty sophisticated stuff. And he goes, I have no idea what you're doing. I go, this is perfect. This is all perfect. And 10 days later, I sent him back a first article. And it went underneath the framework and then fed the turbos. In order to get the thing in, you had to be 2 pieces. And I'm in North Carolina and he's in California. And so made this thing off of what we did and sent him back the first article. And I go, does it fit? This is freaking perfect. I made another one for a spare because you got to have spares, whatever like that. And then he said, do you want to come out to the salt? I'm like, okay. And went out and cleaned drain pans and handed him screwdrivers and wrenches. And pretty soon he lets the wrench in my hand and I turned it a couple of times. And he goes, you figure out why you're here yet? And I go, no. And he goes, yeah, you do. Whatever. And then I've been going ever since. Now my brother goes, met a lot of friends out there. I have friends I went to grade school with. I went to elementary school with that lives in Salt Lake City. He comes out and visits us. Another day we got rain. What do you want to do? He works for the airline industry in Salt Lake City. Hey, can we come take a tour or wherever you work? He goes, come on out. So 10 of us get a couple of bands. We go out, tour this airplane rebuilding facility, got to play with big jet engines and stuff like that. And it's all friends and it's all Southern California.
Yeah, Bonneville's definitely bucket list for me for sure.
Friday, Saturday, or Sunday at Speed Week. That's all you need. But that's before everybody blows up. Everybody's blown up by Monday. And you can't find a hotel room on Friday and you can find anything you want on Monday. Everybody's gone.
Let me see if I can run down the list here. We have sprint cars, midgets, IndyCar, NASCAR, Pro Stock bike, Top Fuel cars, Pro mods, land speed cars, dinner plates, briefcases,
walking canes.
Yeah, you make some pretty cool walking canes out of carbon fiber.
Yeah.
My understanding about the canes is you don't sell them, you just give them to special people.
If you told me your uncle had a hip replacement, he's 92, and he wants to get back in his airplane or whatever like that, I'd make sure you had a cane if he wanted one. But I've given them to people that use them for a little while. Linda Vaughn's got one of my canes. How's that? You don't, what over there, or whatever his name is, whatever. You don't even know who Linda Vaughn is. Hey, hang on. I'm coming right.
I'm just wondering, did we miss the space shuttle? He seems like he's had everything else.
Yeah.
Dude, you want to talk about that's Linda Vaughn.
Yep.
There she is.
She has one.
There you go, buddy.
So I'll go back into the Bill Simpson stories. The lunar module they left up there, the Jeep, has Simpson seatbelts in it. and the belts were made in Torrance, and everybody in the factory got to sign the seatbelts before he sent them to them guys to put in the lunar module.
Send them to the moon.
Or the lunar, whatever that thing was.
The lunar
Gee.
rover.
Yeah.
Lunar rover.
got
I'm a little bit of a
Simpson-
space nut.
It's got Simpson seatbelts on it.
My
So-
dad helped build the computers for the Space Center, or not Space Center, for the shuttle program.
Unbelievable.
So
That's
now,
cool stuff.
now I'm really going to put you on the spot because
Go.
this is not something we
Ooh, I know
talked
what this
about.
is.
Not something we talked about, and probably left to your own devices, you would not bring up yourself. You have spent at least the last 2 months that I know of.
He perked up on that one.
You spent at least the last 2 months that I know of running supplies, bottled water, propane, everything else.
How about 5 months?
Every day, 3 or 4 trips a day, money out of your own pocket up to the hurricane ravaged areas in North Carolina. Not for any credit. No one's putting you on TV or not doing a reality show. You just do it because that shut him up.
Yeah. I've met some really nice people. So I live right by Statesville Airport, and that whole thing happened or whatever like that. I drove over to Statesville Airport, and they were running supplies up there through a hangar at Statesville Airport. And it was just like an assembly line. It was really cool how they did that. So why am I just over here in my pickup truck? I have a 24-foot enclosed trailer. Man, I could move some stuff. So I go home and get my trailer, and you get in line, and you're in line for 3 or 4 hours. And it's just because they're loading everybody up. There's 200 people working. They aren't just cruising. And the girl, Callie, farmer, what do you got? I go, that white trailer's mine, whatever. And now you're inside the hangar, and she goes, you can get a lot of stuff in there. And then she goes through her list of supplies and what she needs where. Go, how about this place right here? And I go, sounds good to me. And they give you a piece of paper with the address and name on it. And if you get stopped at a checkpoint, you show them that you're bringing supplies and you get through the checkpoint or whatever. And she sent me some pretty scary places, but that's the way it was it was quite a while at Statesville Airport, taking my trailer up there, unloading, come back, try and get 2 loads in a day, and you can't because there's just not enough hours, and they would close at 6:00. And by the time you sat in line, got loaded, went up there and tried to get back, and the roads were bad. It was really bad. And so I've still kept in touch with them. And then Sharon Bollinger in Lake Nebo area, whatever, is another person that gives me marching orders or whatever. And if I haven't heard from them by like Wednesday, I'll start calling them. And then we do whatever. And the trips take between 6 and 12 hours. The longest I've taken is 12. I have delivered to Nashville because a girl was having what's the party you have for your baby? For a shower.
Baby shower.
Baby shower.
Whatever. And it's a friend of my daughter's. And she's telling me about this. And nobody's coming to her shower because the roads are closed. They can't get there. And I go, what does she need? What are you talking about? My daughter's in California. Her husband's at Camp Pendleton. And it's a newborn. It's going to be a girl. And I told Sharon up at Nebo, and she goes, I gotcha. And so I loaded my truck up. I have a crew cab truck. I loaded everything in there. I couldn't see the mirror on the right-hand side. And I drove to Nashville. And I didn't tell my daughter, and I didn't tell this person. I just knew her address. So I rolled up to her door and I knocked on the door. Dude comes out. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, my daughter is Chelsea. She told me this. And then there's another dude that walked up. Hey, what up? And I'm telling him. And then the girl walks out. She goes, I said, I'm Chelsea's dad. And she goes, yeah. And I go, I got stuff for you. And it took all of us probably 15 minutes to unload my truck. I had that girl bawling on the ground. I'm like, yes, this is cool. And so that's how all the trips have gone, all the way up to just delivering water to Swannanoa. And it's been very humbling. I'm pretty sure I'm close to triple digits in making runs. The most runs I've done in a day is 4. Depends on how close or far away they are and what we've got to search out. And the least is 1 a day or whatever. But it's very heartwarming. The people are super nice. And if you want to put it out there, I have not seen one FEMA person. I have not seen one Red Cross person. And I've not seen one government person in 5 months. Wherever they send me, I haven't seen any of them. How's that?
Not surprising.
And the president was here. He was in Swannon, and I listened to the speech. We're from California. I listened to the California speech and what he was jumping on their butts and everything like that. Everybody's busy, but I haven't, other than he sent the people to fix the roads and stuff like that. I have seen evidence of that or whatever, not personally, but I've seen the results. He jumped on that pretty hard. But as far as funds and help funds and more funds, any funds would be really nice. And all I can do is speak about what I've seen. Things closed down, things you can't go to. People won't take stuff, supplies drying up, and it's still going on. There's people up there living in trailers, living in tents.
And
I don't know
we're
what to say.
5 months out?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for people taking care of people, the neighbors and everything like that, they'd be in a lot worse shape. But I went up, going into Asheville is kind of going up over the grapevine that you're going up the hill and you come down the other side or whatever. So that's the way it is going to Asheville, but it's a bump in the road. It's not a hill. We're going up there, trailers loaded. Sharon's with me. The only time she went with me, and she's looking around. She knows stuff that I don't know because I don't live up there, but I've been driving by all this stuff. And she's looking down the center divider. She goes, huh? And I go, what? The Jersey barriers, the concrete Jersey barriers in the middle of the freeway, they were all at the bottom of the hill. I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, the rain washed them all down. I go, what? She goes, all this stuff is new. And then I started looking at what she was looking at, and I'm like, that is all new. And it's not like the rain picked up speed halfway down the hill and then washed the stuff down. It started at the top. There was scales at the top. They're gone, freaking gone. Gosh, don't get me started. But Mother Nature
She'll kick all our ass and not even blink.
So there's rivers that were like 3 feet wide that became 100 feet wide. And then went back to 3 feet wide and took everything with it. One place I go up there, I look off to my right and all the river rock, all that stuff is devastating. And there's a house out in the middle of where this water was when it got washed down there or whatever like that. Every time, both ways, I see the house out there and I'm like, yeah, the house is out there. That's cool. It's just out there, not doing anything, just hanging out, whatever like that. And a week ago,
New riverfront property.
I noticed the house was gone. I'm like, oh, something changed. The house is gone. It's stuff, but it's been, gosh, I miss some really good people. The people are really nice, taking care of each other, but they're still people intense.
It says a lot about your character that you go to the extra effort to do that. And I appreciate it. And I want to thank you for it.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. I got some, gosh darn, all the stories I got are good. It's all good. People helping people.
What are we missing? What do you want to talk about?
Arm restraints.
Nothing called me. Pink arm restraints.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about a head and neck restraint? Are you going to go to the next outlaw race or high limit or Lucas Oil or?
I'd say so. I'm not saying this for you guys to bring attention to it.
Yeah.
I was going to go to high limit race in either Paris or in Central Arizona because I am in San Diego. My grandmother, she has stage 4 cancer. It's the second time she's gotten cancer, and this time this is it. This is going to be it.
Yeah.
So we went to New York. She lives on Long Island in New York with my aunt. And so I went out there and I spent this past weekend with her, or else I would have been out there in Casa Grande for that race. But that was my plan, was to go. And I, honest to God, if I had a choice, I would rather go see a late model race than a sprint car race, and that was
Taxi cab.
Well, I think
being in
better.
the South, you're converted. I am a diehard circle track sprint car guy. There's no sprint car guys here except for Casey that I can talk to, whatever. But and then I got to be friends with Scott and some of those guys. We do house parts for rocket chassis, and I'm starting to be converted a little bit.
So that was one of the things. Like, if I had to choose between rolled outlaws or high limit, I would roll high limit. I like what they're doing better.
Yep.
But I'm a huge Casey Kane fan. So my dad, that's how I got into racing was through my dad. We watched a lot of NASCAR, and he was a big Dale Jarrett fan. Dale Jarrett started to roll out of Cup at the same time Kane was coming into Cup. I latched on to Casey Kane. One, I thought the Dodge cars just looked freaking cool, and those Dodge paint schemes and the way they did their numbers and stuff.
My brother was at Dodge with Ray Abraham. He was there.
That is awesome. That is cool.
We got stories.
Is a guy that I just want to pick his daggum brain.
Genius.
The dude probably, yes, man. But we're a dirt track podcast, so we'll move on. But yeah, so watching Casey Kane, I watch Casey Kane. I have a car from every team he's been on, right? From the Toyota Red Bull team to Levine family, all of it. And just been cool to go out there and meet Casey Kane and talk to him. But yeah, another part of it was this, look, what is everybody wearing? What are they doing? Not just the high dollar guys like Kane or Sweet or Silent. We've promoted Caleb a little bit. Caleb Montgomery is a phenomenal story for what he's doing with what he's got. It's just to see what everybody's Caleb, he's probably going to run he's on a shoestring budget, but he's still going to run safety equipment the best of what he's puts out there. So
you'll get it. Okay.
That's my tangent. Sorry, boys.
Late models.
Late models.
I went somewhere at the end of the season, whenever Scott won his last championship, it was somewhere in Georgia, Rome, Georgia, and somewhere else. And I'd been to, I hadn't gone to a couple of them in a row. And so I stayed out there and with them guys, I can't remember where the last one was. He won the championship, but in between races or whatever like that, working on a sprint car, you go to the car wash, you come back, you mount tires, you run the valves, change the oil, clean the filter, whatever. And I'm watching these late model guys. I was with them the whole weekend, like I say, for a couple of races. And all I saw was legs underneath this car from sun up until wheel packing. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? These guys are working their butts off. And it was 3 guys, not one. There's 3 guys underneath that car. And I just couldn't believe the amount of work in those cars. It's the first time I'd witnessed it in person or whatever, because the people which on TV and which in the stands, we all know that or whatever is different than what it really is at the car wash at 3:00 in the morning and all this stuff like that. But I'm just like, you guys work your asses off on these cars. Yeah. And we're all motorheads or whatever. They got friggin' 450-inch small blocks in these things. And they got 18 springs underneath that body. I'm exaggerating, but you're just like, what is all this stuff doing? Those cars are actually, they're amazing. And then on top of all that, Larson hops in, just wins. And you're just like, you don't do that. You don't do that.
Yeah, he'll never amount to anything.
What a talent.
That Rome, Georgia track's pretty nice. I've been there. I watched a race there before.
Yeah, it was the eye-opening for me, just hanging out with those guys all weekend. They worked their butts off, and I've been to Scott's. We did quite a bit of stuff with Scott and been to the shop and see what goes in it from A to Z. And it's just like, nobody understands how much work is in those cars. And I mean, sprint cars are too, whatever like that. But Scott's building everything, hanging the bodies. And the only thing he wasn't doing is building the motors. But they're building the chassis, and he walked me around. I was there more than a couple times or whatever, and why he does what he does. And the guy's always thinking. And the late models, the dirt late models, I don't know anything about pavement. Dirt late models, they're fun. I'm enjoying them, being around those guys.
Yep.
Hardcore racers, hardcore.
Yep.
I think we're going to bring it to a close. Thanks, Kenny. We appreciate you coming on. It's been a
Not
pleasure.
tomorrow yet.
It's damn close.
Just
John's not
thank you
here.
so much.
Thank you. John's not here, so I don't remember all the socials, but walks away. Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
But we couldn't get much better guests than we've had the last couple times. I appreciate you coming on. You're
Thank you so much.
Welcome on here anytime.
Stickers.
Phil's got the Dirty Sliders stickers that are going to be going out to our Patreon supporters.
Okay.
We got shirts. We got dozens of people listening one time.
Yeah.
By the end of this whole thing, you're going to be 100 there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If we're lucky.
Good night, everybody.
I do.
Thank you very much.
Just hang
Mr.
tight,
Kenny.
buddy.
Good night, everybody.
It's-